I'm Brenda, aka Compet. Thanks for coming to my channel. As you guys can see from the title of this video, this is going to be a video talking about the different changes I made in my study habits to bring my GPA up. Let's get started. Just a quick note and a disclaimer out there. This is all personal experience, so this isn't going to work for everyone. And also, this may sound repetitive for some people, so I hope this is going to help someone in some way, or this can just be a reminder for people who needed it. Keep in mind that I made these changes, actually, honestly speaking, my 4th year of college, and I was in college for 4.5 years. So I made these changes pretty late, but they did have an effect on my GPA. So let me just put the basics out there. I was an environmental earth science major concentrating in land and water resources at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And just to put the numbers out there, like I said, I didn't really take this studying tips, changes thing seriously until when I got into it wasn't until I got into my senior year. I did start it a little bit into at the very end of my junior year, and Cal Poly is on the quarter system, but it was really senior year where I really honed it down. But there was changes in junior year as well. So at the end of my junior year, my overall, this is overall, so including my freshman, sophomore, all of that, overall GPA was a 2.4, almost a 2.5. It was a 2.48. And then I ended off my college career, and it's gonna be on the lower side, but like I said, it's the cumulative GPA. I ended off as a 2.74, so that was a 0.3 jump. That's not gonna sound like a lot, but trust me, it actually is really hard to get a 0.1 jump, especially if you're doing it at the very end of your college career. And that was also me obtaining 2 dean's lists after I did that change. So let's get started into the tips. So my first tip is gonna be one that I think everyone says, but it's never gonna happen until you actually release the fear of it. And that is, go to your professor's office hours. I was definitely one of those people who was afraid. I never wanted to ask professors questions because I always felt that they were gonna think I was dumb and how did I not know it? But I got to the point to where I really just didn't care anymore, and I just really wanted the answer. So for example, I took chemistry 3 about 1.5 years after I took chemistry 2. So I lost everything that I knew from chemistry 1 and 2. And obviously the professor is going to assume that you know those things because you made it to chemistry 3. And there was a concept that she taught in chemistry 1 that I just lost, and I just didn't know it anymore. And I went to her office hours one day, and I couldn't get through any of the homework problems without that concept. And then I kind of went up to her and just asked her straight out. It was honestly an easy concept, I just couldn't find the answer anywhere. And I'm gonna be honest with you, she did give me kind of a dumbfounded look, such as, how do you not know this? You're in chemistry 3. But like I said, I didn't care. I was paying to be there, and I was paying to learn. And I got my answer, and I got through my questions, and I passed the class. So try to not be afraid of your professors. A majority of them are there to help you, and even if they give you a dumbfounded look, you're gonna get the answer, and you're gonna need it. So go to your professor's office hours. Tip number 2. Know how you study and stick with it. That's just, like I said, a lot of these tips are gonna sound repetitive, but this is, I feel like it's just gonna hone down, and I hope that I'm another example of a person who these actually helped. I am a visual learner, and I'm a talker. So those 2 things were definitely the things that were gonna help me study. Visual, I was fortunate enough to have a study floor on my dorm. I was dorming for 4.5 years, and they always had whiteboards. So I always took advantage of whiteboards. I would always write things down, whether it was a math problem, a physics problem, or even if it was some type of English or some type of reading, I was writing things down because I was visual, I needed something, and I needed to write it down and see it. And then another thing that I did was I like to talk a lot. And I was very fortunate to have my boyfriend, but if you talk to yourself, that's also fine because I've done that before too. And what I tend to do with my English classes and my classes that required reading or required some type of memory when it came to some type of fact, I kind of told it like a story, and I had my boyfriend kind of sit in. So for example, when I took art, anthropology, for my anthropology class, I kind of just told him things like they were fun facts. and I told them stories like they were fun facts about the different things I learned in class. So things like that, you have to know your studying type. So if you tend to just need to read it out loud, read it out loud. And if you tend to just do better by just writing things out, then do that. So that's another thing that I advise is know your study skill and actually find ways to study with that. Tip number 3, find your perfect study space. And don't get influenced by others because they have their own study space. And what I mean by that is just because someone does well in one area doesn't mean you're going to do well there too. And sometimes that works. Sometimes you'll see someone and you're influenced by them and that will help. But sometimes it doesn't. And that's how it was for me. For example, I always heard of people studying on the 5th floor because it was so quiet. It was a perfect study area because of how quiet it was. So I tried it for about a week and I did not like it and it did not work. It was too quiet, if anything. I found myself kind of just being on my computer rather than doing work. So that didn't work out for me. Another thing was studying in my apartment. I would always see my bed and want to just go lay in bed. So I never actually worked there either. So my perfect study spot was always someplace in a cafe. And I loved coffee, I loved food, so they were all there. And I would stay there about 2 or 3 hours. And that's gonna sound short for some people. But that was honestly a perfect amount of time for me to study because I needed breaks in between anyway. So a coffee shop was always my perfect study space. Tip number 4. So this is going to be kind of a tricky tip because it's going to be dealing with lifestyle a little bit. And sometimes that is out of our control. And in my situation, it kind of was, but it kind of wasn't. So I was working 2 jobs at a point. Not a lot of hours, I'll admit. There's definitely a lot more people out there working more hours than I was. But to maintain good grades and to pay bills, it didn't work together. So I did something that I personally wouldn't really recommend to someone unless you understand that you're going to be financially responsible for it, because I'm dealing with it now. So what I did was I was already taking out student loans for school because I was on campus every single year I was at college. And what I ended up doing was taking out the rest of my student loans that I could take out, which wasn't a lot, I'll be honest, but I mean, it was more than what I really needed. And that was to help pay for bills if it ever came to it. I had the money there. And what I did was I cut back a little bit, not a lot, a little bit on my working hours. Because this next tip is honestly giving yourself some me time. And there's gonna be some people who can't take this tip. There's gonna be some people who they have to work 40 hours, 50 hours to make it by. And I was fortunate enough in my situation where I did talk to a couple of advisors and I consulted my high school teacher before I did take out the extra loan because it was a very concerning thing for me. I did not grow up with money and I did not grow up with the best examples of financial responsibility. So it was a big step, but I was very serious about bringing up my grades, and I honestly needed some time off for either myself or if I needed it, extra study time. So I did cut down my working hours, and if it's not just that, it's just finding some time for yourself. Sometimes you really just need like maybe a day or maybe just a few hours of not studying and not working, because that extra rest definitely helped me. And I understand that not everyone can do that, but if you could, definitely think about it and definitely try to schedule in some me time, because it personally helps a lot. It helped me not be so stressed, and it helped give me extra time to study if I really needed it. Tip number 5, schedule your studying accordingly. And what I mean by that is there is a good thing about time management and splitting up your different projects or your different homeworks and everything. And if you work best like that, then that's great, because I think that's something that I wish I had. But I had to split it up according to what the assignment was. So, for example, writing an essay, I am not great at writing. And even if I did have time to write the essay, I still needed so much work. When it came to writing essays, I always had to break it down, do the research first. And then what I did with writing essays was I would write a big old draft. I wouldn't do any editing to it, or I would try to avoid any editing while I was writing it. I would just do a giant draft. And then I'd break it up and create an actual crisp, rough draft. And then I would go to the professor to go see if I need any editing done. So I had to definitely break that down, and most of the time my essays were due in 2 weeks after it was assigned. So I would break that down, like first day I would do this, in 2 days I would do this. So an essay writing, I definitely had to break it down. I couldn't really just do it in 2 days. I used to do that in high school when I thought I was a good writer, but I wasn't. And then another example, when it came to like chapter readings or anything like that, and we had quizzes, I would do them either the day before or a couple hours before the class. Don't do that if that's not what you can do and that just wouldn't work out for you. But it worked out for me because the information kind of retained better. I didn't have to, because there was a time when I was reading it like weeks before or like a week earlier, and I would just lose it. It just wasn't interesting enough to stay on, or I was just taking another information or something, but it just wouldn't stay. So I wouldn't do so well on quizzes, and those are easy points. So what I did was, for like quizzes and everything, I definitely did the reading before, like a day or a couple hours, because that's how I retained the information better when it came to reading. So plan your studying accordingly. My last and final tip for you guys is something that is going to be said to you all the time, and I think is probably one of the hardest ones to do. And that is to find the motivation of why you want your grades up. I know a lot of the time people viewed it as, I'm spending money on this class, I'm spending money in college, and I need to do better. And if that's your motivation, then that's great. Even for someone who didn't have money growing up, my family got by. That still wasn't the motivation for me. I think it's because I'm the type of person that has to see it. And because I was doing financial aid and I was doing student loans, I didn't see the money go away. It was kind of already automatically paid through financial aid and the student loans. So money wasn't the motivation for me. My motivation was seeing my GPA and just thinking about how I could be doing so much better than what I was getting. And that was honestly the biggest motivation for me. I've had professors give me advice saying, it's kind of really the connections that you make, and your GPA doesn't, obviously keep your grades up, but you shouldn't worry too hard about your GPA. But it was at a point to where I was getting 2.0s. I got academic probation once. So I just wasn't happy with where I was at with it, and if I could change it, I did. So that's what I did, and that was my motivation for this. So if you can find the motivation of why you want to bring your grades up and why you're going to college, definitely keep that in your mind, because that's going to help you get through it. Alright, that's all the tips I had for you. Again, I know that was probably repetitive for a lot of you, but I hope that I was another example showcasing that these tips can probably help you out, or it just gave you the motivation, because I'm also the type of person that when I see someone being productive, I want to be productive. So I hope this helped out someone in some way. And the school year just started for a lot of you guys, so I wish you guys the best of luck, and I hope that you guys do well in school. And thanks for watching my video. Subscribe below if you like, and if you have any questions, I can answer them as well. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.